Peace. One of the biggest mistakes that theists make, or one of the biggest problems with theism as a whole, is that they ask you to take a very unwarranted and irrational leap of faith. What leap am I talking about? Talking about the leap from God exists, therefore holy book, right? Insert holy book here. Whatever holy book you believe in. I know a lot of atheists hate when I do this, but I'm and like in my previous videos, I'm granting the existence of God for the sake of argument. So if we just start off with a deistic God, a God of the philosophers, a generic God, how do we get from this God exists to this God used this book to communicate with mankind? I haven't seen any theists make that connection. I know to a lot of y'all, this probably sounds strange because you've never thought about this in your life, right? You just took for granted that this book is from God. You was raised believing that, right? You've probably been believing it. Somebody taught you that before you reached the age of reason. And you just, dismissed all the other books as being wrong, being from the devil, even, right? Never questioned your own book. And I'm not even really trying to get into the contents of the book. I know y'all are going to try to tell me what's in the book that proves it's from God. I'm not getting into none of that because I read the same book and I was convinced otherwise, right? So you can appeal to what's in the book, whatever your book may be. In fact, a lot of the people who believe in those books don't even read them. So it's not the book that makes you believe in the book. That would be irrational in itself. But just try to imagine for a second that you were never exposed to any religion. Never heard of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, none of this. You grew up in a fucking remote island somewhere. They didn't have no access to the outside world. So in that state, imagine you stumbled across a Bible and just washed up on shore. What would lead you to believe any of those books are from the Creator? Think about it. You wouldn't know what you were reading or what you were looking at. Let's assume these people can read and speak English. Or Bible in their language floated ashore. Ain't the Bible been translated into every language? It doesn't matter what's in it. Like I said, contents are not important. Because we're talking about the fact that an omnipotent God would use a book to communicate with people. Why would an omnipotent God do that? Is that a rational thing to do? Listen closely to what's being said. How is it rational for an omnipotent, omniscient being, a perfect being, perfectly rational being, to create a book that it knew would be misunderstood, mistranslated, misused? How is it rational for a being to do such a thing? Yeah. Wouldn't there be better ways to communicate with people? Wouldn't there be clearer ways to communicate with people? If there are, wouldn't it be more rational to use those ways? And some of y'all just your knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, well, what would you want God to do? How else was he supposed to communicate with people? We're talking about an omniscient being, an omnipotent being. It means he had infinite possibilities. He could have actually wrote it on our hearts, like Christians say. Could have just beamed whatever message he wanted us to know in our brains. He could have beamed it into the elect if it was only for a select few. Some of y'all believe these books are for everybody. So if you believe that, then you got to explain why God would use such a method, such a rudimentary, primitive method, especially during a time when most people couldn't even read. So it really doesn't make sense if you think this is a message for everybody. Because if he wanted everybody to know it, he would have put it in a way that everybody would know it. There wouldn't be no need for translations or scholars, interpretations. Couldn't God write a book in a language that everybody would understand? He's got that power to do so, right? It wouldn't even have to be the language. It could be dots on a page, and then when you see it, it automatically makes sense to you because God wrote it that way. It could be a blank page, and you look at it, and it tells you what God wants you to know. You got infinite possibilities. Just think of the ways we use to communicate with people now. We've come up with much more efficient ways to get a message across to a large amount of people. So you're going to tell me God couldn't think of that? You couldn't have thought of something like the internet? Why not just create fucking emails instantly? That would have been fucking amazing, right? That would have been something supernatural, worthy of a God. Not just a book that people were already writing. Nothing miraculous about another book. Y'all gotta explain that leap. Why would I take that leap with you? We only even discussing him using this method because there are people who believe he used this method. People were raised thinking God communicated with you through rocks and trees and through the oceans and animals or through nature, which makes a lot more sense. If people believe that, we wouldn't be even considering a book as an option. Like, gotta make it make sense. Could have used a lot of different things. Why your book? There's no reason whatsoever for me to believe any of these books come from any supernatural being, period. All we know is that people write books. We have no experience with God's writing books. We only have claims that this happens. So you have to have give us some reason to accept that claim. God could have wrote his message in the clouds. He could have used the stars. Could have made it so that no person could have mistranslated it. That it couldn't have got into all these different versions and different hands and different languages. And like, y'all say God is not the author of confusion. That's what the book says. But you can't use that because it's in the book. What the fuck would this book know about God? Why would we assume that this book is accurate about describing God in any way? That's what I'm talking about. Don't have no reason to make that leap other than somebody taught you that and, you believed it. So I hope I was clear about it. I know it sounds crazy to some of y'all, but it's just a simple, rational question. So I'll be waiting for y'all's brilliant, logical arguments and rebuttals. Till then, think while you still can. Peace.